So I believe this is my last slide here. The last thing I'll talk about is the media coverage piece, because that's really important to me. And the media coverage piece, one, it helps you reach more people, right? So every time I do a major media spot, I get some really amazing people that, find me and send me emails, long emails, right? And that's amazing because I get to engage with another person. Now, obviously, I don't get to respond to everybody, right? Because it is overwhelming. But it helps to bring people into your network. And I teach borrowing audiences. So in terms of media coverage, what you are doing is borrowing audiences. That's why I want you to write down a very specific list of the media outlets that you want to land on, because you want to get in front of places that have a built-in audience. And some of these things you need to think creatively about, because it might not be obvious that this particular outlet is a place that you should be on. So for example, I don't know how many of you are familiar with The Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God. He has been very controversial, right? All of the politicians go on his show when the Democrats, when they're running. And I went on that show, and people were like, well, why do you want to be on that show? First of all, he's very controversial, and it's really a hip hop show. I said, listen, it's one of the biggest shows in the world in terms of podcasts. And I do work on Black comics, and people that like hip hop also like comic books. There is an overlap. If you think about it like a Venn diagram, right? There's this show that has this audience that focuses on hip hop. There's me that does comics. And within there's an overlap in the middle of my fan base. So yes, I want to be on that show, even though it's not a show about comics. So I want you to start to think creatively about shows that may be adjacent to the thing that you're doing, but within there's a fan base that overlaps, and write that down as one of your media coverage goals, and then start to develop a process to landing those media coverage goals. I'm going to go over two things conceptually with you before I hand it off to Jennifer around how you can think about media coverage, because you don't need to pay a publicist to do this. Publicists are going to be like $2,000-$3,000 a month. They're going to get you a couple of media slots, but this is not going to be worth it. Okay. So one is the ladder effect. And I call it the ladder effect because if you can think about your media coverage strategy as a ladder, you will be successful. And let's just assume that everybody in this call is starting out at the bottom of the ladder. That's okay. Well, the bottom of the ladder is going to be more low-level media spots. And we can include podcasts as media, since podcasts are like outpacing radio. You start at the bottom. You get some easy media spots. Podcasts that get you in front of a specific audience, local places, your local NPR, right? My local Philadelphia NPR loves me, right? They want you. They want to know that you are in the community and you have something to offer. And then as you move up that ladder, you use the previous media spot as leverage for the next one, right? So you can't get to ABC featuring you if you haven't done the low level stuff yet, because you don't have anything to leverage. So if I were to go pitch, I don't know, Good Morning America, well, I can say, hey, I was already featured in NBC. I've been on NPR a bunch of times. I was on the Jill Scott podcast. All of these things that these outlets are going to care about in terms of leverage and moving up the ladder. So if you can envision yourself climbing up this ladder over months and years, you will be at the top of the ladder. And once you get to the top of the ladder, you don't have to pitch these places anymore, because your brand, which is the keywords that people will type in that will bring you up in a Google search, it's already going to be established. So you don't have to do that work anymore. You only have to do the work at the beginning. And then once you establish you get that media coverage and you get the top of the ladder, you don't have to pitch anymore, right? They just come to you. The second thing conceptually is just understanding status roles. And I prepared for you. I have notes here because I want to make sure I communicate this correctly. Human nature is to operate off of status. Okay, we care about status. So driving a Tesla communicates something. This is why people make money and waste it on cars and stuff like that, because it communicates status. We care about status, right? having an Apple phone or an Apple product communicates something to people, and it all comes down to status. Status is actually an emotional connection. It's why when you buy some new sneakers or a new car, you start seeing more of that on the road, because now you got selective attention. It's actually confirming this large purchase that you made so that you can feel better about yourself. You might go one step further and look at the type of person driving that car. I used to have a Jeep Wrangler, and they do this little thing. And I don't know if anybody has this little thing. They do this when you drive past, and a Jeep Wrangler is like a whole language, right? It conveys status. Well, this is how the media works. When you are pitching yourself to the media, you have to convey your status. The beautiful thing is you already have status to convey. You have an advanced degree. You have accomplishments that you have already achieved, but you have to communicate that status to the people that you are pitching to. That's why I focus on people with master's degrees and PhDs, because whether you realize it or not, you already have status. You already have the thing you need. Having a master's degree and having a PhD specifically sets you apart from a lot of people. People are automatically going to pay more attention to you when you say, hey, I am Dr. So-and-so. It's going to get you into a lot more rooms than not having that. And so you want to take those two things into consideration when it comes to media coverage. So what does this look like tactically? So let's say one of the things that you should do is reach out to journalists and editors that are writing on the subject area that you want to be known for. If there's a journalist or editor that has already published a piece on, let's say, why Wakanda matters, since I do stuff on Black Panther. Well, now I know that this journalist or editor cares about this thing. So I know that I can now reach out to this journalist and say, hey, I have a book called Why Wakanda Matters. I see that you wrote about this last year. I would love for you to do a featured piece on me, talking about all of the ways, Black Panther is important for the mental health of Black people. That is what my book is on. Now, in there, I am conveying status. How? One, I'm going to tell them, I have a PhD. I write about Black comics. Two, I wrote a book. Writing a book conveys status. Three, I'm going to tell them, hey, I've been on X, Y, and Z podcasts or shows, right? Things that are recognizable. So pitching journalists, producers, hosts is about doing the hard work for them of telling you why you should be on their show or why you're important for their audience. But the second piece is conveying the status that you already have, the high level things that you already have, because a show or a podcast, they want to be able to say, I had this guest on my show that was seen on NPR, or that was seen on BBC, right? Or that was seen on X, Y, and Z, because people care about status roles, and you want to use that to further your career and to give yourself leverage.